Okay, I think I'm ready now. So what I'd like to do again is for this morning, basically just make sure that you guys know what you need to know to finish the semester out for sculpture. And, and then if you have any specific questions about your piece. Um, so let's see here. Just someone couldn't join. Okay, so uh, let me start with questions. Does anybody have a specific question that's really holding them back?
Oh, I
Yeah,
think
Jason.
the links on Canvas to submit the wood carving and the Nevelson box assignment
Yes,
isn't isn't online right now.
it's broken again. Huh?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, for the clay one and the wood one.
The wood carving one in the Nevelson box.
Okay, I will definitely check that. That seems to happen occasionally, and I'm not quite sure why. But I will absolutely check it here as soon as we end today, and it'll be back on again. Thanks for telling me about that. Are there any other links that anybody's noticed are broken? Well, that's good. Okay. All righty. Let's see. Well, let me ask that again then. Anybody have a particular question on, I suppose, primarily the Totem project or the Earthworks project? Does anybody have a question there? No?
When are we going to get our grades for them?
Yes. So I'm working on grades all day today. And I have to apologize to you guys. You should have received your grades on everything quite some time ago. It's just thrown everything into a loop here. And unfortunately, grading has fallen to the bottom of the to-do list. That's not fair to you guys. It's just the reality of what's going on. I do apologize for it. And I hope to have at least some of the grades by the end of today. Okay. Let me say it this way: as long as you get your projects in, you should all be doing fine. It's the missing projects that are an issue. So make sure you get everything in if you haven't done so already. I put on the announcement on our Canvas page that I'm putting together also a website of all your work, since we're not going to be able to see, or you guys haven't been able to see everyone's work in addition to your own. So the link for that website is already live. The website is the same spot it was last week, and which is unfinished, but I at least wanted to tell you that that is happening. And that is something else I'm just doing. So that's not the priority over your getting your grades out, but it is a way where you'll be able to see everyone's work. And I'm also going to put pictures up there, different ones that I took of you guys working. So all that'll be in there. Hopefully it's something that you kind of just like to take a look at, as well as see everyone's project. So that'll be up. The link is on the Canvas site, announcements. All right, well, let me just go through the basic things that I want to make sure that you hit on these last two as the best that you can. I do understand that it's unusual circumstances. So the way I'm saying this, these are goals. These are what you're trying to do. And then depending upon your situation here, you do the best that you can to make that happen. Okay, so I guess the first thing I want to do is to remind you, even if you've turned in your final one and you still, for for some miracle, you have have still some time, or you'll have some time because you finished your other projects, your other finals and everything. So if you have that luxury, or it's something that later on in the summer you wanted to return to because you saw some possibility there, then I would say as a guide to look back at the original assignment sheet and what we talked about, the recordings that when we talked about those assignments, to try to make them the best that you can make them. So with the totem project, symbolism, we introduced kind of symbolism as a major aspect of that one. And also this idea of the storytelling part of symbolism, or how you could communicate a message with the three-dimensional object. So that's something I think that, again, as a goal that you want to try and hit. And of course, the physical requirement of it being taller than yourself, and then the location. So those are the four main aspects of that assignment. And again, I realize that you're at a disadvantage in terms of probably location as the major thing. You don't have a whole lot of choice there. You also don't obviously have a lot of choice in terms of material that you can work with. But if you can work with that, that's good. On the earthworks, then that requirement of using natural materials or organic materials, and then we kind of expanded that a little bit to include how it might be addressing the four elements: earth, water, wind, and fire, how it might come from organic materials, let's say orange peels or something like that, nutshells, any of those kinds of things work in there. And then we also expanded it a little bit to include ideas that we might traditionally call landscaping, or something in that line. But again, a goal is thinking about where the location is for that sculpture. The storytelling symbolism aspect of it would be the other really big requirements that you're trying to hit. Having said that, I really want to focus more this morning on just a few parting comments about sculpture in general. And one of them is this idea that, well, why I put those requirements on those assignments. So if we go all the way back to the first assignment, that hopefully an introduction or a broadening of awareness of how physical objects exist in our world. So they exist in our world for practical purposes. I use this thing to do this task, or it helps this to become easier, that practical. But it also has a visual aspect of it that could be quite dynamic and equally meaningful as the practical one. That's a difference from it being an aesthetic reason where it's simply decoration. Nothing against interior decorating, nothing against decoration in general, but there is a difference between a visual aesthetic quality where the purpose is what I would term merely decoration, and an aesthetic reason which also is one that can communicate. And so what we've been trying to do here with even this beginning class is to kind of get an appreciation for what that might mean. So the early stages of that are just looking at space in a very purposeful kind of way. So sometimes I call that just seeing with purpose. So we're looking at objects, things, whether that thing is a car, whether that thing is that we can put a name on, or whether it's an abstract version of sculpture where that thing has projects some things, projects some communication because of the material it's made out of, how it's constructed, the form that it occupies in space, as well as the space that it surrounds. And that kind of thing, that concept, hopefully, at least stays with you, whether you ever make another sculpture in your life. But that idea of looking at your surroundings is an important one. So as you go forward in your careers, in whatever your majors are, no doubt there's still a three-dimensional aspect to it. You know, if an easy one is if a dentist needs to obviously pay attention to how the tooth that they fix fits within the environment of that person's mouth and the teeth that are next to it. Otherwise, it's, it might still work. The person no longer has a toothache, or they filled the hole in their mouth for practical reasons they can eat. But on the other hand, you want it to look good, right? It's part of the way we look. And so that's just maybe a more practical example of what I'm referring to here, of a three-dimensional object and how it fits in an environment, and it is more than just decoration. Another thing, so we introduced that with the Nevelson box assignment, and then the wood assignment, that one, again, but now we're creating the form as opposed to assembling forms that are already been made by somebody else or some other process. But then with the organic wood sculpture, thinking specifically of a kind of form, organic, like it's growing. And how does that contrast with things that are man-made or made by some kind of mechanical process, or any kind of process really that is not a natural process? What are the differences in that? How are they compatible? How can they relate? That's all a big picture thing. The little part of it, though, that we were looking at, again, is a further exploration of this idea of a form occupying space and surrounding space. So then as we go to the clay one, a different process, it's really pushing that idea a little bit further, but now it's no longer totally abstract. Now the clay one is something that we can recognize that's a face of something. So now there's a little bit more of a challenge to make it look a particular way. With the organic one, we kind of have a lot more freedom, but we're just working purely as a form. It's not trying to be something else. With the clay one, it is trying to represent something. So now we even in our own head, we have a standard of that needs to look like an eye, a nose, a mouth, an ear, whatever. Even if it's a caricature of something, even if it's an imaginative creature, but certainly if it's trying to reproduce a character that you know from something else, from a comic book, whatever. So that's another version of this. I'm really sorry that we couldn't do the mold making process, because that whole idea of moving from positive to negative and back to positive again of a form is a really, really strong way to reinforce these ideas of form, sculptural form, and occupying space. So that particular one we didn't get to experience, but I know you've all had some version of it. So as we are talking about these sculptural ideas, and you think about how that might affect you molding sand at the beach, either when you did it as a kid or when you've done it with a niece or nephew or something like that, looking at it in a sculptural way, that whole thing, it can expand the whole fun of just making sandcastles at the beach, because you can imagine that this is a miniature version of anything. It's a storytelling quality. I think the two projects that you had to try to complete while you're at home, without specialized tools, without the choices that we would like to normally have, and of course trying to get an understanding of what it's about from this format, is extremely difficult. I really have to congratulate all of you on your efforts to meet that challenge. I don't think I would do well at all if I were in your shoes. I think that it just is so much more difficult. It's hard to get the concept. It's hard to really get feedback when I'm really just looking at two-dimensional pictures of something, again, that's three-dimensional. I can't walk around it. I can't do any of those things. I can't get it's how anybody, communicating that three-dimensional idea through two-dimensional means is very, very difficult. So how to understand how to tackle those things that you've had to do is even more difficult. I really I think you've done some really good efforts on that, every single one of you. I hope that process has not added undue stress to this already stressful anxiety kind of time. Sculpture is normally not something that causes stress. The arts are something that normally do not cause stress. They're usually something that, I think in most cases works the other way around. It helps us to relieve stress. It helps people to look at their world in a broader way. It helps us to appreciate a number of things. That's one of the really cool things about art in general. It doesn't have anything to do with whether we call it good art, best art, masterpiece stuff. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It has to do with the process of trying to look at and kind of let your head go into that world and see what you come out with. What do you end up creating? This idea of making stuff, this idea of creation of objects with some goals in mind, that's important for us. And we can do it with a bar of soap and a butter knife, or we could do it with a torch welder and Corten steel and anything in between and beyond. It doesn't matter that. It's just that process is important. Let's see, maybe one or two more specific things with the Earthworks one. Since that's the one that by far the majority of you guys are trying to finish up now, if you haven't already. The Earth and the totem to a certain degree, but the Earthworks, we were starting to push into what I would call a more contemporary approach to what the sculptural idea really means. And I mentioned this briefly when we started it. I'm still sure it's a little bit difficult to understand now, but I'm going to attempt a little bit on it again, okay? So bear with me on this one. So contemporary sculpture is no longer totally driven by this idea of form occupying space and surrounding space and that kind of thing. And that concept is very abstract on the one hand, and it's very cerebral on one hand. It's the kind of work that many times when we see it out there without context, a lot of people look at it and say, I don't get it. What, it's not the reaction of, oh, my 5-year-old could do that. It's not that reaction at all. It's the reaction of, or the idea that many, not all, a lot of contemporary sculpture is kinetic in nature. It is very, very temporary in nature. It's not meant to last. In some cases, it's not meant to last more than an hour. And so it's an attempt to try to make sense of these other things that human beings feel and think about, and trying to represent those qualities because they are fleeting, trying to represent them in something that's not, I'm not trying to nail it down. I'm not trying to absolutely say it's this. I'm saying at this moment in time, this idea, this feeling, and it could be any one of those that we have, as human beings. At this moment in time, this is what it could look like. And so when we, and that might be through electronics, it might be through video, it might be installation, it might be audience participation, it might be anything from a flash mob kind of thing. to it might find its way into a light show at a concert. You know, there's so many variations of this now because of digital technology making this possible, and then all of the inventions in terms of machines and toys that we have that can be employed in different ways. You know, the way we can alter our voice, the way that we can project images, just the fact that we're doing the Zoom thing, you know, the technological thing, part gets in here. And if taken and looked at in a way that can be trying to represent something that is actually in the same world as us, is what a lot of contemporary sculptors are trying to do, as opposed to like like right now the Zoom version, that's separate. It's something we're looking at on our monitor, so it's in there. When we end the meeting and shut the computer off, it's gone. But it was never a sculpture, because it's not out here in our world. But the idea of that a lot of contemporary sculptors are doing is taking this and dissecting it or divorcing it from a two-dimensional screen or only one screen, and placing those screens in an environment that now it seems like it's in our world. And that's a sculptural idea. And it's a communicative kind of thing. It could be symbolic. But it's definitely based or driven more by a concept than it is being driven by what the thing looks like as physical form. And that's the main difference. And I wanted to just spend a minute or two talking about that again, because you guys are all going to have quite successful careers. You are going to see, or at least have the opportunity to see, all sorts of things, and one of them being art at a high level. And you don't want to be in the position of feeling extremely ignorant about what that is. It's not about whether you like or dislike it. You can have a personal like or dislike about any of this, but an understanding, a comprehension of why something is there is ultimately more important. And so when you see some of this stuff, I just ask you to maybe remember a little bit of what we were trying to talk about here as a crack opening the door of trying to figure out what those things are or what that was doing. And perhaps if the person was there that made it, you could ask them. You know, you could ask an intelligent question. So that's one of the main things I kind of wanted to throw out for us here too. All right, so let me come back to practicality again for a minute. So to actually finish up the semester, you know, you're obviously uploading your remaining assignments to Canvas. I'm going to look at those links that apparently are not working, and I'll try to check all of them, make sure they're working. And you just need to have everything uploaded by 4 o'clock on Wednesday. And we aren't going to meet again as a group. I will be, no doubt I'll have, let's say Wednesday morning, I'll be on here. So if you have some last minute thing that you want to run by me or ask me, or I can't upload it or whatever that might be, then I will be on here and you can certainly contact me that way. I guess the other practical thing is that it makes my life way easier if you simply send me JPEG images, not anything through PacShare, you know, or any other format. It just cuts the amount of time for me down, makes it easier. So if you wouldn't mind making sure they're JPEG images that you upload, that would be really appreciated. So that's kind of all I have to say. Do you got any other thought from anybody here today? Okay. All right. Well, I won't keep you any longer then. I really enjoyed meeting all of you. Those of you that are graduating, congratulations on making it all the way through. Those of you that are still going to be here around another year or whatever, I hope you drop in, maybe take another art class. That'd be cool. But otherwise, again, there is no class on Wednesday as a class. I will be here on Wednesday morning. If you'd like to drop in, ask me a question or something with that last one, that's all that is. But it's not an actual class. Okay. All righty. I'll see y'all.
Professor,
Take care.
Professor,
Yes.
I just had a quick question. I
hey.
don't have photos of my Nevelson box.
Yeah. Don't worry about the photos of the Nevelson box. We didn't go around and individually do that. You're good there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And, oh, you know what I should say is when we can get back to school, all your projects are there that were there are still going to be there, and you can certainly come by and pick them up. Any of you that have most importantly, the wheel that we did the clay sculpture was on. If you could get that back to me at some point. I think there might only be one or two of you that have that, but that's important for me, and that can happen at any time. Okay. Any other question?
Sorry, one quick question. So do we have to resubmit like the projects onto Canvas?
If you send it to me in email already, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
Okay. All right. I will let you go now. The recording of this will be up, so if you want to look at that too. Okay. All right. Bye-bye.